Okay, it's time to review something in the mainstream. Nothing small scale, nothing experimental, and nothing controversial. Just a crowd-pleasing, fun superhero film. Hey, it's controversial. Since its inception in 2008 with Iron Man, the MCU has dominated the box office and reinvigorated the way superheroes are portrayed on screen. Now, I have reviewed 2 MCU films in the past, and overall I do have a lot of respect for the series. They have managed to sustain audience engagement in their products for 11 years and have turned out some great, emotional and crowd-pleasing movies that anyone can watch. But for all the good films, there are the ones that range from okay to mediocre to bad. And I'm sorry to say, but Captain Marvel falls in that area.
I do not need a 40-year-old white dude to tell me what didn't work for him about A Wrinkle in Time. It wasn't made for him.
This is the first MCU film to revolve around a female character. And because of this, I was expecting 2 things not based on the film's quality that were to follow it around during its release. This included controversy around Brie Larson, and talks about female representation in film, both of which happened, but something else unexpected popped up. The audience reaction wasn't as overly positive as normal. For a while, it had around a 35% audience rating on Rotten Tomatoes, and even though most was geared towards Brie Larson's controversial comments, many did look past that and found the film's content to be very average. Because of the film's focus on representation, it reminded me of last year's Black Panther and 2017's Wonder Woman. And even though I didn't really like both of them, I can't say they weren't universally praised. But for this film, it's getting more negative reviews overall. I wonder why.
Congratulations, Agent Fury. You have finally asked a relevant question.
Oh, congratulations to you, Star Force lady. You're under arrest.
Okay, I want to start right away with our main character because I have a lot to say, and it's the biggest problem with the film. Captain Marvel is the blandest protagonist since Thor in his first installment, and even he was more memorable than that. And the reason for this is she's written exactly how I feared she would be before seeing it. A Mary Sue. She shows all the symptoms, from being good at everything, not showing any kind of negative emotion or trait that could perceive her as being weak or vulnerable, and the lack of subtlety in scenes where they show men looking down on her in a negative light, making them seem evil and one-dimensional, come across as incredibly comical and overbearing, and as a result made it the most unintentionally funniest part of the film. And the movie is so focused on physically showing her being the most powerful MCU hero who's the sole reason that the Avengers even exist, that they forget to give her a memorable personality with flaws that the audience can relate to. But then, it hit me. Remember the time when Joss Whedon tried to give Black Widow flaws in Age of Ultron to further her character from being bland and one-dimensional, and as a result made her feel stronger and more interesting? Well, that caused so much backlash from feminists saying that it made her character a victim and more of a damsel that Whedon evacuated Twitter. And that was back in 2015. Since then, nothing like that has occurred with the films, but female Marvel characters have become more interesting with moments of guilt, struggle and shame that allows them to be more memorable and have greater obstacles to overcome than just beating up bad guys. Characters like Gamora, Black Widow, Scarlet Witch, Nebula, Mantis, Valkyrie, Jessica Jones all have personal issues and conflicts that build their characters. Whereas Captain Marvel is the physical embodiment of this SJW pandering movement and feels solely made to appeal to the demographic that forbid Black Widow from showing weak and negative traits 4 years ago. Talk all the shit you want about Rey being the poster child for the Mary Sue, at least she was entertaining and had a personality. Brie Larson is boring and underdeveloped. The only conflict she's given is the fact that she needs to remember her life on Earth, and that setup could have resulted in an interesting character study with a fair amount of emotional and confronting moments, along with plenty of action to keep audience engagement. But this is completely destroyed by having every character just hand over information about her life without her having to work for it, which is yet again another trope of the Mary Sue. It just kills me that we have all these characters in the universe and the first standalone female installment is on this forgettable safe plot device, which is being used as a way of progressing female representation in film when really it's tarnishing it. And I only hope that the Russo brothers fix her character just like how they helped Captain America and Thor with the help of Taika Waititi from being bland, uninteresting archetypes to realistic, relatable and interesting characters. Just because you have the flashiest abilities and a sarcastic attitude doesn't make you automatically interesting. Okay, enough about Brie Larson. How was the rest of the film? The rest of the characters range from okay to bland and forgettable. The only character I genuinely liked was Nick Fury. Not only was the de-aging effects completely unnoticeable throughout, but Sam Jackson's more energetic and lighthearted performance really stood out from the cast. And comparing his role to previous films, it was cool to see a different side of Fury's personality that was less serious. I also thought that Ben Mendelsohn's Talos was good and had some interesting moments, and the Skrull subplot was pretty interesting and was hands down the best element of the film. Lashana Lynch, Annette Bening, and everyone else was fine, but the worst performance alongside Brie Larson was Jude Law's Ronwog. And it's sad to say, but Marvel has broken their good villain streak. Not only is Jude Law bad in the role, but his character had no real motivation for his actions and was so paper thin that he left no impact on me or anyone I was watching it with. It looks like I need to put him on the bad side of the diagram. And also, the film literally had the biggest chance to bring more development and screen time to Ronan, a character who is regarded as one of the most forgettable villains in the franchise. And what do? They give him 1 minute of screen time where we learn absolutely nothing new about him, making him useless and unneeded. The film is not that funny. I didn't laugh once, and the only time I chuckled was the montages. The jokes were at times distracting and slowed the story's momentum, and the script, while okay when it came to certain moments, was very forgettable and didn't try to evoke any emotion that would have made it more memorable. The fight scenes are some of the worst Marvel has ever shot. There are too many cuts that it becomes jarring and annoying. Imagine that conversation scene from Bohemian Rhapsody but sped up and with added punching and shooting sounds. It's hard at times to even figure out what's going on, and the way they make Captain Marvel just this overpowered being results in every fight scene having no suspense or tension. The production design is honestly really great. The way they capture the 90s without it being pandering is very well done and isn't distracting in the least. Everything looks great from the tech, clothes, and the general grainy aesthetic that is presented in many scenes. It's a nice change of pace, and at least they didn't join the 1980s craze, which is becoming more and more annoying. Also, dropping Captain Marvel in a blockbuster was a great way of visually conveying the times, and I have a lot of respect for that. The music was fine. There was some moments where it sounded very low-budget sci-fi with the use of strings and having a more distorted sound, but most of it was just standard Marvel, except for the pre-existing music choices. Like Nirvana's Come As You Are, which pops up in a scene for 10 seconds and then magically disappears after a cutaway with no real attention put towards it, and is of course just dumped in there for nostalgia. But the worst one is of course, if you've seen the movie, No Doubt's Just a Girl, which is randomly played during the final fight scene, which instantly changes the film's tone, is an obvious device to push female empowerment with no subtlety, and is the only time 90s nostalgia is overbearingly forced upon the audience. And to quote Mike and Jay from Red Letter Media,
that was cringy.
That made my skin crawl.
Yeah.
And made my eyes roll back in my head.
So to end this off, Captain Marvel is very low on my MCU list and is a blatant reminder of how this type of movie hurts the perception of strong female characters. Now, my worst MCU film is Iron Man 2, and do I think this is worse? Yes.